Hello, and welcome back to Book Love with Mrs. Collins. In my last episode, I shared some great new middle grade books by Black authors, and some of you, however, are probably interested in books for slightly older readers, more young adult than middle grade. The books I will be featuring today are all designated as young adult, which means that they include mature content like sexuality, addiction, death, violence. They have high school age characters, and usually the type of language in the book is typical of kids in their mid-teens. You know what I mean. And I know it's not February anymore, but there are still many wonderful books by Black authors to share, so I thought I would do one more episode dedicated entirely to Black authors writing for young adults. So stick with me for some book love. The first book I'm going to feature today was one of my favorite new fantasy books of the last year, Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. The system of magic in this book is intricate and super well developed, and it draws from both Anglo-Celtic legend and lore as well as African-American legend and lore, like think Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table meet like root magic. Super cool stuff. I love me a well thought out, intricate system of magic in a fantasy book. Now, this book is also part of a small but growing category of fantasy and sci-fi with Black protagonists, which is critically important right now, as Black folks are sorely underrepresented in YA and adult fantasy and sci-fi particularly. Add to that it's a great mystery, it's thrilling, it's action-packed, it's emotionally deep, with real, fully fleshed characters, and you definitely have a winner. So at the beginning of the book, our heroine, Bree Matthews, has just lost her mother in a car accident, and her grief is raw and real and constantly threatening to overpower her, especially because she just lives alone with her dad, who is also grieving. So in order to get away from it for a while, Bree has decided to attend an early admission program for high school students at Carolina State University, which is nearby. On her first night there, however, she witnesses two students fighting some sort of supernatural being, something that none of the other students, including her best friend who went to this program with her, seem to be able to see. And then when one of the students fighting the demon creature thing notices her there, he somehow wipes her memory and sends her on her way. But the memory wipe doesn't last very long for some reason. And the recovery of this memory that got wiped unearths another memory that was also wiped in the same way from the night of Bree's mother's accident. So now she's suspecting that death wasn't an accident at all, and decides that she's going to infiltrate an ancient society of demon hunters called the Order of the Knights of the Round Table. Yep, that one, that round table, who seem to have somehow been involved. The two students that she witnessed fighting were both members of the order. I gave this book 5 stars on Goodreads, which is something that I almost never do. If you like fantasy, you're going to need to get this book right away. The next book I will be giving some love to is called The Voting Booth by Brandy Colbert. The first of the alternating narrators is Marva. Marva has just turned 18. I did say these were going to be young adult books, and is going to be voting for the first time in her life, something that she literally has been waiting her whole life to do. She is dedicated to making a difference with her vote and is serious enough that she's even decided that she is dumping her boyfriend of 2 years because he says he's not going to vote. Marva knows that for people like her, young Black people, participating politically and helping others to do the same is the sacred legacy of the civil rights pioneers who came before her, one that she intends to uphold. Now, the second narrator, Duke, comes from an equally political house, but is having a hard time caring since his brother Julian's death 2 years before. Julian was the passionate one. Julian was the one who went to protests, and he's just not feeling it. Now, he's going to vote anyway, because if he doesn't, he will never hear the end of it from his family and to honor his brother's memory. But when he gets to the polling place and realizes that he never actually updated his voter registration when he moved, he's ready to just give up. There are long lines. It's crazy. They've closed down a bunch of polling places. Now, lucky for him, or maybe not, that remains to be seen, Marva is there and sees him getting turned away from the polling place, and she decides that she is going to personally ensure that he gets a chance to vote. And so begins an epic day together, struggling against all of the ways in which people of color in this country are so often denied the vote and getting to know each other at the same time. The romance in this book was sweet and realistic, and Duke and Marva are great counterpoints to each other. And the knowledge drop about voter rights and attempts at suppression is timely and important. I loved every bit of this book, and I think you will too. Slay by Brittany Morris completely slayed me. The main character, Kira, has a big secret, one that she feels she has to keep from everyone in her life, even her boyfriend, lest she be judged. By day, she's a regular girl, one of the only two Black girls, the other being her sister Steph at Jefferson Academy. By night, however, she transforms into Emerald, the creator of Slay, an interactive RPG. For those of you who are not gamers, that's a role-playing game for and about Black culture all over the world. Along with her co-moderator, Cybele, who she's never actually met in person and doesn't even know her real name, Kira has created a world in which Blackness in all its beauty and variation is celebrated, where she can just be herself without having to constantly play a role or try to rise above people's messed up expectations. But when Slay somehow starts getting attention from the mainstream media and the game starts getting accused both of being racist for its focus on Black cultures and simultaneously not Black enough, and one troll in specific seems to be out for blood, Kira's going to have to fight to defend her world. Now, I loved that the protagonist of this book was a female, Black, video game loving, coding superstar who literally created her own world. And I love the way in which the book celebrated Blackness as more than just one thing, one way of being. If you're into video games or just want an awesome drama, you're going to love this book. Now, I'm going to bookend this episode with fantasy. The final book I literally just finished reading last night. I was listening to the audiobook and nearing the end of the book, and I got to that point, some of you will know what I'm talking about, where I just needed to know what was going to happen in the end now. So I pulled out the text copy of the book so that I could get there faster and not have to wait for the narrator to read it to me. The book is called The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and it's a high fantasy book set in a kingdom called Otera. Now, at the beginning of the book, we meet 16-year-old Deka, a meek, brainwashed girl living in a strict patriarchal religious dictatorship that preaches that women are meant only for subservience and obedience, and that they are weak and incapable. All she wants, all she wants is to be found to be pure during the ritual of purity and be allowed to cover her face with a mask like all of the other women and to find some man to obey. To be totally honest, while I understood that she had been brainwashed by this society, it was kind of painful to live in her head at the beginning of the book. But things quickly go from bad to worse. An attack by the monsters who terrorize the kingdom, the Death Shrieks, on the day of the purity ritual, no less, reveals that Deka has the ability to control Death Shrieks with her voice, which apparently means that she is automatically impure, which gets demonstrated rather grotesquely by the fact that when cut, she bleeds gold instead of red. Since her society's religious texts demand that any impure girl, an alaki, be sentenced to death, the elders and priests, and even her own father, sentence her to death immediately, deputizing the young man she had just been flirting with to run her through with a sword. And she dies. But the thing she never knew about Alaki is that they don't stay dead unless you kill them in just the right way. So she wakes up alive and whole again, but this time in the cellar of the village temple, only to be subjected to a variety of grotesque and horrible deaths over the course of months, including being beheaded by her own father. But even after a variety pack of 9 deaths later, Deka is still alive, although obviously emotionally scarred and numb. She still believes through all of this that she somehow deserves all of this torture, deserves the elders draining her of her golden blood and enriching themselves from its sale. I know, it's awful. So when she's taken from this horrible place by a female emissary of the emperor that she only knows as White Hands, to become a soldier in the emperor's army in the fight against the Death Shrieks, it takes her a while to get past the mental anguish and pain of what was done to her. But get over it she must, because Deka has a destiny, and she's going to have to come into her own to realize it. Now, I loved many things about this book, but I think the thing that stood out most to me was the strong message about our world. Because despite the book being set in a fantasy world, it was very clearly talking about some things that are very relevant to us. And I loved that the biracial narrator was the completely badass star of the book, showing both the bigots and the sexists that a Black woman can kick all of their behinds. Thank you for watching and listening. Book Love is a production of me, Mrs. Collins. If you like this show, don't forget to like or subscribe to make sure you get the next episode when it comes out. You can also follow Book Love on Facebook, which is a great way to send me messages or requests for future topics or episodes. If there's a type of book that you want to hear more about, just let me know. Our theme music is Don't You Think That I by Jay Lang. Till next time, have a great week.